morning. I apologize again. We had something that's never happened to us before with the power surge, which unfortunately has fried some of the equipment that we use to bring you the live broadcast. And my understanding, unfortunately, is that some of the pre-recorded videos, we're having trouble broadcasting those. So we're going to innovate. We're going to innovate on the spot and change our program around a little bit. And some of the pre-recorded videos, I don't think we're going to be able to show those, given we lost some of the computers because of the power surge that came through the building. So what we want to go ahead and do now, and for those of you who are still watching, thank you, and sorry for the technical difficulties, but we're still going to continue with our live broadcast, kind of like the postmen that continue to bring you, hopefully, the mail through snow and sleet. So we're still live, and I have to my right Mick Cochran, who's a partner at Kilpatrick and Stockton, and thank you for being here, Mick. And I have to my left Amelia, who is the executive director of First Step Staff, and we're going to talk to her in a second. And I see on the camera, and can you hear me, Mark? I can. So you can see we're innovating a lot here in Atlanta. So thank you for joining us. So Mark is with CARE. He's actually coming into us via Ecuador, and leads all of CARE's innovative work, and we're looking forward, to talking to him. But really, and then I want to give a lot of credit to Mick Cochran. I should also say, Mick is the chair of First Step Staffing, but Mick has also been the pro bono counsel to the Westside Future Fund, and a lot of the great work we've been doing, especially around affordable housing, has been brought, thanks to a lot of great legal work led by Mick and his team. And so, but we're gonna on the theme of innovation, we're gonna start with Amelia with First Step Staffing. Tell a little bit about, because my understanding, when Greg, who's the founder of First Step Staffing,
yep.
He was a very successful entrepreneur, and then the way I heard the story about he wanted to take on Atlanta's, I think, hardest problem. Can you tell folks a little bit about how that where that original vision came from?
Yeah, so Greg was definitely an entrepreneur. He was an out-of-the-box thinker. He was a businessman. He had sold some companies and had money and wanted to find a way to give back to his community. I think he was pretty agnostic about what that was going to be originally, but he started to meet with some of the leaders in the city, so Mayor Shirley Franklin and A.J. Robinson at Central Atlanta Progress, and said, what does Atlanta need? What are the pressure points? And a big focus at that time, back in 2006, 2007, was homelessness, was going to be a big focus. And Greg did what he would do in a business setting, said, well, what's missing in that ecosystem, right? What does Atlanta not have? And what we didn't have, at least not anything at scale, was a jobs and income solution. So we could do housing first, but we couldn't do income fast.
Right.
So it wasn't sustainable. So
the very, first step coming to being was an innovation on how to address a systemic problem of homelessness.
Correct.
And well, that's actually a great segue to Mark, because Mark, tell a little bit about for folks. Well, first, where you are, what you do with CARE, just to kind of orientate our audience to who you are and what you're doing with CARE.
For sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it. My name is Mark Malhotra, and I head up the innovation work at CARE US. I'm actually calling in from Quito, Ecuador, where I'm based. And for those who don't know, CARE is a global nonprofit. Last year, we worked in in just about 100 countries globally. We reached almost 70 million people directly through more than 1,000 projects and initiatives that we ran.
And and as you said, CARE was headquartered in Atlanta, so we're very grateful for you coming on and talk a little bit about what you see as some of the kind of key innovative things you do with CARE, because you and I had a kind of interesting discussion about that in our kind of interview yesterday as we got ready for the show.
For sure. At CARE, we see innovation as a key piece of our work. As a team, our philosophy really is that the people closest to the problem really have the best solutions. We're not looking at someone sitting in our headquarters in Atlanta, sitting in London, New York. They're not going to have the right solution or the best solution for a community in, let's say, here in Quito, Ecuador, or even in Cambodia. People in those local contexts who understand what's going on and what's happening are the ones that really can solve those problems. It's our role to support them, to empower them, to bring in resources and opportunity to help them solve those problems. So our team is really focused on working with our country offices and giving them the tools, the skill sets, and the opportunities to really uplift solutions that they have on the ground and implement them into programs. One of our large programs that we've been running for the last couple of years is an accelerator. So it's an internal accelerator where any of our care teams globally, if they have an innovative program or solution, they can raise it to our team, and we work with them to bring in some innovation tools that are used a lot in the tech sector and the private sector around, making sure that, your customer or our clients in these communities are at the center of our solutions, making sure what we're doing is something that they want and something that they'll use, making sure that we test and experiment. So, I think like all of us here, resources aren't always what we want them to be. So we want to make sure that we're making the best of the resources that we do have. So how do we test ideas really quickly? How do we, make sure that what we're building and what we're investing in are solutions that we know will be able to scale, that will be in demand by communities, and will work and have an impact?
Well, thank you. And I want to, kind of turn to my right to our other, live panelists. And Mick, Counselor, thank you for being here this morning. And when you first actually, brought this idea of really talking about innovation, kind of reflect on when you really thought about bringing this broadcast, some of what was in your heart, especially with First Step in Care, and as well as the Westside Future Fund around the theme of innovation.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks for hosting us today. I think that we live in a very dynamic world where change is upon us, and the speed of change is fairly amazing. I don't think anybody on January 1st of 2020 envisioned where we would be in September of this year, let alone have a good vision of where we'll be a month or 2 months from now. I think that sort of dynamic of change imposes upon charitable organizations a need to be adaptive and a need to think through innovation and how its mission, its programming, its fundraising all come together to deal with a changing and dynamic world. I think what's super interesting about the discussion this morning is you have 3 very successful organizations that have a very different reach, all based within about a mile of each other here in Atlanta, Georgia. Care International is one of the leading global organizations in the world. As Mark mentioned, they do business in 100 different countries. They think about innovation every day, and they're a shining example of success in our community. First Step Staffing, which started on Auburn Avenue and was a very local Atlanta-based business, has grown over the last 10 years under the direction of Amelia and my good friend Greg Block to be a national organization. As Amelia said, we service 6 markets, and we have the audacity at First Step Staffing to think that we will be a national solution to the homelessness situation in this country. We have the Westside Future Fund. The Westside Future Fund is focused on 4 neighborhoods on the west side of Atlanta. So we have everything from a global organization, a national organization, and a local organization, all who have to think about the same fundamental question, which is how do we adopt our programming? How do we fit with the things that we need to do in a world that is just profoundly different and changing and evolving all the time, even this morning as we tried to do this broadcast. From my perspective, as a lawyer in a large Atlanta law firm, again within the same 1-mile radius of these institutions, it's been fabulous to participate in all of their innovation activities, and I think there's a lot to be learned and adapted for any charitable organization of whatever scale, of whatever focus, as you think about your programming and your planning.
And for those, some of the early work of the Westside Future Fund, and back to the Westside Land Use Framework Plan, is that when we started the work of the Westside Future Fund, the neighborhoods that we are focused back in 1960 had 50,000 residents, overwhelmingly African American and mixed income, but for the wrong reason, meaning segregation and Jim Crow. So kind of the high wage lived with the low wage, and the neighborhoods have depopulated. The good news is people are moving back into the city because jobs are coming back into the city, but with that, land prices go up. And one of the things we really want to lean to the Westside Future Fund with our other impact partners like Quest Atlanta Habitat, Atlanta Housing, and so many others, Invest Atlanta, is really to ensure that the legacy residents can remain, both homeowners and most of the folks are renting. And so one of the things I really want to thank Mick Cochran, who was then with Denton's and now with Kilpatrick Stockton, is we learned from another effort up in Cincinnati about how to really leverage support from corporations, but to create an impact fund that has as its foundation a return of capital, but non-on capital that helps underwrite and really serves as kind of a real force multiplier on our affordable housing work. And you want to talk a little bit about what that innovation looked like, Mick, from your perspective, in terms of that? It's a very unique impact fund. We're very grateful because all the legal work that did it was all pro bono, so thank you.
Yeah, John, I think when you and I sat down maybe 4 years ago, John came to us and he said, look, we have at the core of the mission of the Westside Future Fund is the revitalization of these 4 historic neighborhoods and a desire to make sure that revitalization does not include gentrification. That's a hugely difficult challenge. And the gentrification process of historic neighborhoods across the country has really pushed out a lot of historic residents in those neighborhoods. So the challenge of how could you create the funds necessary to be able to build affordable housing and sustainable housing in those neighborhoods. And what was really impactful was not only the vision of the Westside Future Fund, its team members and its board to have a strategy of really partnering with corporate Atlanta and building out this investment vehicle that provided below market capital in order to be able to sustain and revitalize and develop affordable housing in those 4 neighborhoods. I think when you drive through those 4 neighborhoods, you're beginning to see the change and the good work that the Westside Future Fund is doing in those neighborhoods, and it's been a wonderful partnership between corporate Atlanta and the Westside Future Fund, and I think it serves as a model for how to go about this kind of innovative change. It's interesting, John, and I haven't had a chance to share this with you, but I was in conversations with another major national charity, and I had always thought that the work that we had done with the Westside Future Fund was kind of a one-off. They'd done it in Cincinnati, we've done it better in Atlanta.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're talking about doing it for another charity, utilizing their financial resources. And I think one of the things that's so wonderful, particularly again, sitting on the east side of Atlanta, is that all of this innovation, thought leadership is happening in our city, happening at a time of economic dislocation, and it's been really interesting to see that develop in Atlanta.
And thank you. And what I really want to appreciate is there's so much we can learn from others, and I really appreciate a lot of our partners. I remember we really learned so much from an effort in Cincinnati called 3CDC, a not-for-profit, and got a lot of leadership out of Dan Cathy and Rodney Bullard from Chick-fil-A to go learn about that model and kind of bring it into Atlanta, because what I've always learned is you go learn from others, you maybe modify it to your circumstances, but there's so much good work already out there. And Mark, that kind of brings me back to you, is to, how do you kind of assimilate ideas? How do you help locals kind of bring those ideas to scale? What are some of the key things you see in order to take an innovative idea from somewhere else and help it kind of take root and grow in some other local community?
Yeah, and I think a big piece of this and a lot of our most successful programming is really based on making sure that the community is really involved and bringing opportunities to those communities. I'll give you an example. One of our most successful programs is around savings groups. So savings groups are, groups of 15 to 20 people, and a lot of the times they're mainly women. And they start off with small amounts of money that they save and they put together into a pool. As they build money into this pool, they give each other loans. And you can use that loan for, a piece of your business. If you're a farmer, if you need to buy seeds, it's a pool of money that you can dip into and use, and then you repay back to the group with a small percentage of interest. And at the end of a 1-year cycle, everybody benefits from how that fund was used and the interest that was generated. And then they'll start a new cycle again. We see these groups as really a foundational piece of a lot of our work. When people have money saved, when they have those resources, when they have a bit of security, they're able to do a lot more when it comes to, not just economically, but also from a health perspective and an education perspective for their families and their households. So we build programming on top of this because, it really puts the power and the control into the individuals in the community. It's interesting that you ask about kind of replication. This is actually a model that we're now starting to test out in the U.S. and saying, there's a lot of issues with savings and people having the ability to save and kind of build up that security in the U.S. as well. So we're looking at how we can adapt this model that we've done globally to a U.S. context. So I think, it's really interesting to see how the core of a concept or a solution can remain the same, but you obviously have to make adjustments depending on the context and depending on the needs of certain communities. And I think from CARE's perspective, our deep roots in communities where we work really gives us an advantage when it comes to making sure that we understand what they want, what they need, making sure that, it's a solution that's really driven by them and something they want to use.
Yeah, thank you. And live broadcast audience, thank you for sticking with us as we're bringing stuff back online. And I'm going to invite you into our live broadcast, and I'm going to reach out to our team. And I see the countdown clock, y'all. Did we want to go to some of the pre-recorded videos again, or is that what? Okay. So, thank you. So we were, we're bringing stuff back online and wanted to see which of the pre-recorded interviews that we did in preparation for this show we could bring to you. And so in just a moment, going to go to a pre-recorded interview that our Westside correspondent, Benjamin Early, did yesterday. And Jay Bailey is runs the Russell Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and he really talks about all the great innovative work and around that theme of innovation. But Mark, I had one more question for you, because I was reflecting, how many different countries do you think you've traveled to and studied innovation?
I guess top of my head, I'd probably say about, 20.
20
different countries.
So lots of different cultures.
For sure.
Lots of different languages.
Definitely.
Okay, and you've met lots of different people from different cultures, different countries, different histories. So is there some kind, when you meet, do you have a way to know, no matter, their history, their culture, but do you kind of see, are there some common traits to that person that you meet locally, and like, that's an innovator. That's someone that's gonna, is there some things you've just kind of seen that are in common to people?
Yeah, I think especially, when we look at, we have a lot of staff in a lot of offices in a lot of countries. And a lot of people have great ideas. And again, those great ideas can come from our staff, can come from someone in the community. But there are a lot of people that take that initiative and, when the opportunity presents themselves, kind of reach out and communicate that. So I think from our perspective, you can find those people in lots of different places. It's just a matter of making sure that they have an opportunity to test or to try out some of these innovations. And that's why programs like our savings groups are so important, because that gives people a bit of security, a bit of flexibility in the money that they have to try out new things. We've had groups of farmers that come together and they say, we have this pool of money, let's start a business together. And they'll buy a grain silo. And they'll be the only community in their area that have this. You'll have other, groups that have savings groups, but it only takes one person in these groups to have a great idea and say, this is how I think we should use the savings that we have for all of us to benefit. So, I think it's when people have an opportunity and they're able to really test out that spark of an idea that they have, that you really see people's creativity, and that's unchanged anywhere in the world. Everybody has that.
No, thank you. And I was actually reflecting, listening to your answer. I think I first heard it from when she was Mayor Shirley Franklin, who had the quote, ideas without execution are hallucination, which is a quote I always love, because you have lots of ideas, but to manifest those ideas. And a person who had a lot of great ideas, was a great entrepreneur, was Herman Russell, and was a great executor. And so the Russell Center for Innovation that his family has, the original headquarters building has now turned that into the Russell Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And we're going to do a pre-recorded interview of Jay Bailey, kind of reflecting on innovation. And it's about 6 minutes or so. Then we're going to come back to our live broadcast. So we could go ahead and hopefully cut to that pre-recorded video that we're back online and can share that with you.
All right, this is Benjamin Early with Westside Future Fund. I'm delighted today to be joined by none other than Jay Bailey, the president and CEO of the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Jay, how's it going, bro?
Brother Ben, it's good, man. We're rocking and rolling. I'm focused, man. I'm focused.
I love it. COVID-19 is obviously having an historic impact on people and businesses everywhere. Many businesses are being forced to close down indefinitely, while others are, having to find new innovative ways to reach customers in order to just sustain and get by day to day. Even with that being the case, somehow Rice is, celebrating one of you all's founding 100 businesses, recently landing on the shelves at Target. So what's the magic in the sauce, man? What are y'all doing right as far as educating entrepreneurs on how to be able to grow their business even while so many others are struggling right now?
Brother, it's about community. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do, I think for the past 20 years, we've seen business in silos. I want Jay Bailey Inc. and I only want Jay Bailey Inc. I'm a self-made man. I did it by myself. I got it out the mud. All these narratives we tell each other that build walls that prevent community. Symphony Chips, when they came to us a year ago, they were doing 50 cases or less than 50 cases a month. We got them some new branding, some new marketing, some new approaches, but a lot of that came from the community that we built at RCIE, a company that did their first commercial and their new photo shoots and their new repackaging and their logo and their design. The company that connected them to a couple of Instagram influencers that took them from 50 cases to 2,700 cases. Another stakeholder within our community in RCIE worked with them with some experiential marketing, got them an interview on Good Morning America. That Good Morning America interview catapulted them to 2,700 cases per month. But then at that very day, as God would have it, I was doing a tour with the regional executive for Target. I was able to tell them the story of Symphony Chips. And at a time like this, guys, and for everybody out there is listening, for Black businesses, there's been this great awakening. Lean in. Target started to course correct some of the problems that they had with diversity in their supply chain. And when that opportunity met a ready company, we took off. But it was all about community. There's no secret sauce. I think we've always had the answer. We've always had the lines of the play. We've always had the script. We just forgot our lines. Community has always been first. And if we rely on each other, I think the solutions for our community come from our community.
So Herman Russell, namesake of the Russell Center. He was one of the most innovative people, in American history, honestly, and certainly one of the most impactful entrepreneurs in Atlanta's history.
For sure.
And as you guys, the Russell Center, look to continue on his legacy of Black ownership, what are some of the common threads that you see among Black business owners who come to the Rice Center looking for help?
I mean, it's again, I'll go back to that word, and it may become a redundant theme. We oftentimes think it's a curriculum or a program. We're never going to be able to program ourselves to prosperity or out of poverty. It's not about the program. It's about the community, the culture, the covenant. Mr. Russell created a safe space for young, aspiring developers and architects to thrive. If you think in the landscape of Atlanta's successful real estate, Black people, T. Dallas Smith, C.D. Moody, Noel Khalil, Egbert Perry, all of them got their start right here at Russell. He was an incubator and an accelerator before any of that kind of terminology was real. I think, again, brother, I'm only in two businesses here, and I want to simplify it. We're in the readiness business, and we're in the access business. Our job is to create a platform where we get businesses ready to do business at the next level, whatever that means for them. Everybody may not want to be the next Google, whatever that means for them, getting them to a point of readiness, but then at that point, giving them the access to execute. taking a Dondre with Symphony chips, using and leveraging our access as an institution to connecting to the executive vice president of Target, and watch the magic happen.
As Rice looks to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, stronger and more resilient than ever, what are some of the biggest takeaways or lessons that you and the center have learned throughout this year that you'll look to take into a post-COVID-19 market?
Brother, that we're more relevant than I ever imagined. To have this place where businesses can seek support is critical. We helped about 147 companies successfully submit and get funded PPP through SBA and loan. And when traditionally all the marketing was saying that Black businesses were being shut out. Well, when we parsed out the data, brother, we found that 60 of those companies weren't even in the state of Georgia. What it did from my mind is to say that, you know what, there were individuals even outside of our state who were looking for help, and they couldn't find places that helped people that looked like them. And they knew about this place in Atlanta that maybe could support in some way. It made me realize really quickly, brother, that we're going to have to start creating tools to go even beyond the walls of RCIE, to go beyond the borders of Atlanta, Georgia, and start to look at being able to be this epicenter support, access, opportunity, and exposure for Black businesses around the country.
Jay Bailey, CEO, President of the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I appreciate you joining me, man. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of your work and what you guys are doing at the Russell Center. Keep up the fantastic work. Hope to talk to you again soon, man.
Man, we're just getting started, brother. Thank you so much, Benjamin. We're always here for you.
But now I'm going to, turn back to, Amelia in our panel, who runs our First Step Staffing. And one of the things that's really, innovative about First Step Staffing is how y'all expanded to other cities, which, is a real sign of success that you can scale to other places. So talk about that innovation, how your expansion worked to other cities and your scaling to other places.
So this was an idea that originated again with our founder, Greg, and he talked about learning from other nonprofits and Mark learning from the people on the ground who are doing work in other countries. Well, Greg took a page from his business partners and learned from his business work and learned from that community and mergers and acquisitions. So First Step has grown, and we've now completed 3 acquisitions of for-profit staffing companies. We've funded those primarily through social impact debt. So we're working with groups like Invest Atlanta, with foundations that are interested in impact investing to purchase assets at an existing for-profit company, convert them to a nonprofit, bolster on some supportive services, and then basically just change the pipeline of the people we're prioritizing into those jobs that we've purchased. So we're placing people who are homeless, veterans, and returning citizens. We've been able to do that 3 times, like I said. We did one here in Atlanta in 2015, one in Philadelphia in 2018, and then completed the purchase in California in December of last year, right before a pandemic. But that allowed First Step to grow from this small Atlanta-based nonprofit, putting about 100 people a week to work to, like I said, 1,600 people to work now with revenues over $60 million. So that was really an idea that Greg was able to take to scale, and we'll be looking to do more of those to Mick's point to get First Step in more cities.
And what I really appreciate for those that may not have known about the difference between the for-profit and the not-for-profit model, as a not-for-profit, that means that all of your kind of excess earnings,
correct,
right? You don't send them to shareholders. You do what with those excess earnings?
We reinvest those back into the people that we're serving, right? So at this point, First Step as a nonprofit social service entity is 95% self-sustaining.
And that means by earned revenue.
Earned revenue from our business customers that are paying us to help them outsource their labor and bring people into work.
Yeah, and that's another not-for-profits in Atlanta viewers may be familiar with that work off of earned revenue, like the Atlanta Zoo, the aquarium. So that earned revenue in the not-for-profit language, but as a not-for-profit, that means if someone gives a charitable contribution, you can use it to buy your capital equipment.
Correct, or we can use it, in our case, one of the biggest things we use our philanthropic revenue is to give people rides to work. Transportation is a huge barrier. Last year we gave about 100,000 rides to work. This year we're almost going to double that. So it can go directly to serve the people that we're trying to help get reconnected to the workforce. It's going to direct service. We don't have to cover our rent with our philanthropy.
But the great gift to the charitable contribution is to be able to buy that equipment, and once you kind of own it, then you can use earned revenues to kind of pay for the gas, the driver, et cetera. And so make that turn, because one of I think some of the innovations we're great for at the Westside Future Fund is how we combine philanthropic capital with impact capital to deliver high quality affordable housing. But Mick, you've been such a part of the stand up of the Westside Future Fund. Obviously, you helped, I know, found First Step and now serve as its chair, and I know of Study Care. What are some of the common things around innovation you see in these these three not-for-profits?
I think the fundamental trait that all three organizations have is fearlessness. And when I say that, it means the willingness to look at how you're going about providing your services and be prepared for change. I think there's, both in the for-profit business community and in the charitable community, you can get stuck doing things historically that you've done, becoming very comfortable with your mission, becoming very comfortable with your approach to the marketplace. And the problem is you can get marginalized, and you can get marginalized very quickly because the world has moved on, technology has changed, people consume services in a different fashion than they used to, COVID occurs. And so this sort of fearlessness and willingness to reimagine how to go about doing work. As Amelia said, when we founded First Step, we thought we were a very successful social enterprise here in Atlanta, and for 6 or 7 years we were solely based in Atlanta on Auburn Avenue, and we generated about $1.5 million in revenue. And as Amelia said, we serviced 100 to 120 homeless people every day, which was a significant accomplishment at some level. But because of a willingness to blow up the business model, a willingness to do some things that were truly unique in the marketplace, we're now the 60 million revenue business. We should be
60 million.
We should be an 80 million revenue business, but for
Wow.
COVID. And as Amelia said, we've gone from 100 homeless people working every day to 1,600 every day. And again, we have audacious goals. And I think it's that fearlessness that your team at the Westside Future Fund has. It's absolutely all the way through the organization of CARE, and it's a fundamental part of innovation. Are you willing to adapt on the fly to accomplish the things you want to accomplish?
So, and I love, the fearlessness. So, how is fearlessness different from recklessness?
I think the reckless is to just take what we're doing, throw it in the trash, and pivot to something on an untested basis. Being close to all three of these organizations, I think the remarkable thing is the ability to really be thoughtful and purposeful about the things that you do. I know that when we launched the fund, the Impact Fund here for the Westside Future Fund, it was a result of a lot of consultation with the constituents that you served, with the city of Atlanta, with folks at Invest Atlanta, and within corporate Atlanta, to really come up with a model that serviced all those communities. I remember the trips that you took with your team to Cincinnati to really study what was going on. And so that fearlessness it comes out of a desire to re-examine everything that we're doing and be adaptive, but to do it in a fashion that really meets the needs of the organization. I don't think there's any recklessness associated with any of these three organizations, and they're very thoughtful and purposeful about how they go through adaptive change.
And I really, I take a lot of inspiration from the people in the neighborhoods that we serve, because they are underserved neighborhoods, and many of the folks in the neighborhoods are, working full-time workers, but very low wage under very trying circumstances. And I find them to be inspirational in fearlessness and how they continue to try to improve life for their families and for their community in conditions that many would just kind of give up and just check out. And you work in underserved communities, Mark, around the world. You've listed, I think you said you were in about 20 countries. But what's your kind of observation on mixed kind of fearlessness? Is that something you really see and agree with as well, or what?
Yeah, and I think for us, we still ground our innovation in evidence and impact. Again, you can't be in a situation where you're testing with people's livelihoods. We have to be very kind of respectful of our role and our place, making sure that we're protecting the people that we're supporting while we do innovate. So completely agree with kind of the difference between those two things, because at the end of the day, any activities that we put out there into the market with communities, we want to be certain that it's going to be making a positive impact on their lives.
Yeah. And I was, in Amelia, I was actually reflecting when I think I first met Greg, and he was talking about the vision, because part of what is interesting is that the folks, the men and women that come to First Step, they have to get up really early.
A lot of them do, yes.
Yeah, and one of the things he also discovered about people that were kind of ready to change their life, because part of the journey in life, right, is that if you don't kind of want to pick yourself up, so to speak, it gets hard for others, even if those don't want to help you. And so sometimes I think what I remember Mick saying is that some of the population you're serving has gotten to the point like we really want to do something different.
Correct.
And so there's a certain fearlessness in that in terms of the people that work for First Step.
Well, too, and I think it was a willingness to look beyond the stereotype. You think if you see somebody's homeless, well, clearly they don't want to work.
Right.
Why can't they just go get a job? And the answer isn't as easy as that a lot of times. And so I think just giving the opportunity and seeing the power that those individuals have and their willingness to pick themselves up, they just lack the opportunity in some cases. They have different barriers that maybe we're not aware of. And we've basically been able to disprove the stereotype with our growth. I mean, we're working in for-profit businesses that you all would know. I mean, there are businesses all around Metro Atlanta that are hiring the people from First Step. And we've been able to grow those businesses. So in Philadelphia, we purchased a for-profit staffing company. It had about $17 million in revenue. Our second year in Philadelphia, we exceeded that revenue by 41%.
41%?
As a nonprofit, putting people who are homeless to work. So, I mean, it makes business sense, right? If they weren't willing to work, if they weren't good employees, if they weren't willing to step up and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, then the business community wouldn't be embracing them and putting them into work because their profits depend on it. So I do think that there is some innovation and some fearlessness kind of at the root level of First Step too.
No, and what I appreciate you said about, too often, right, we don't see something because we have some, internal narrative. We've kind of labeled someone, maybe we don't see clearly. And what I appreciate about studying great innovators is they see things other people don't see.
Yeah.
And I remember Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, had the advice, don't go to where the puck is, go to where the puck's gonna be. And one of the things I just heard you say that, which I've really come to appreciate is that folks often assume if you're homeless, you must not really have any more grit. You must kind of want that. But what you're saying is kind of back to Dr. King's quote, it's hard to pick yourself up by your bootstrap if you don't have a boot. But you're working with a lot of men and women who actually have that grit and that determination, and you kind of lift them up. But I suspect there's some of your best, what you find is some of your best and loyal workers.
Well, they are. We had a gentleman come in 2 weeks ago. He had been in prison for 19 years. We offered him a job first day he walked in, and he broke down in tears. He said, I've never had anybody offer me a legitimate job. Nobody would hire me. And just the opportunity to give him that, he would hit the ground running and is employee of the month at this point because he was just ready to go but didn't have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about that modeling is, where we have on our mission statement, compassion.
Yeah.
And we all make mistakes, but we heard he made some mistakes, but was ready to have a different life, and y'all reached out your hand and did that.
Yep, and we didn't do that work. He's the one showing up for work every day.
Right.
He's doing the work. We just gave him the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's amazing. So 41%. So Mick, as chairman of the board of this not-for-profit that is, seems like it's, by a lot of metrics doing great, how are you feeling about the expansion of other cities? What do you see on the horizon for First Step staffing?
We are very excited about First Step, probably 4.0 at this point in time. And as Amelia knows, we go through a lot of iterations. But we've had some wonderful discussions in the city of Seattle. San Francisco, the governor of California has been very supportive of our efforts.
Wow.
The order of magnitude, there are roughly 6,000 people on the streets of Atlanta. There are roughly 6,000 people on the streets of Philadelphia. John, care to guess how many people are on the streets of the city of Los Angeles?
I do not care to guess.
60,000.
10 times.
10 times. The West Coast cities of San Francisco, Seattle are severely impacted, and they have an enlightened set of city officials and community activists trying to find solutions. So the West Coast cities are very important to us. The city of Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, all of these major metropolitan areas have the same opportunity to figure out how to create solutions to help people that have recently experienced homelessness and returning citizens and other people with job impediments find their opportunities to go to work. And so we're very bullish on the years ahead, and we look forward to being able to report a lot more success as we move forward.
Well, on sticking with our theme of innovation, I'm hoping that our innovation of our live cam will be back working again, and we're going to now cut back to our Westside correspondent, Benjamin Early. And can you hear me, Benjamin?
I can. Can you hear me, John?
I can. So, wow, that was quite a journey, wasn't it? We've never had that happen before.
I know.
So thank you.
I know, but look, we take it in stride. We're used to that on the West Side, baby.
Yeah, that's right. You do take it in stride, and I think one of the things about any great innovator is I think I actually have the quote is, success is kind of not giving up on failure, meaning, stuff happens, but you got to pick yourself back up and keep moving. And so thank you.
Absolutely.
And when we cut out, I was just, sharing with the audience that 970 Jefferson Street, which is where the Atlantic Community Bank was originally founded by Bill Bowling. And we were very fortunate that the Atlantic Community Food Bank, in a partnership with the Foodwell Alliance, which is a not-for-profit that Bill Bowling now chairs and is supported by the James M. Cox Foundation. And we were able to buy the building at below market, actually helping use the proceeds of our impact fund. And we also had some philanthropic support. But the vision for that, especially with the West Side Trail coming, was to have it, and the Foodwell Alliance's vision, which helps support farming and organic gardening throughout Metro Atlanta, but some of the highest concentration of that organic farming and growing and distributing food is on the west side of Atlanta. And so the vision is bringing the facility back online, but another innovation in partnership with the Foodwell Alliance, there's some great not-for-profits that are in there that, where food is grown, put together and put back out. But you talked to one of those innovative not-for-profits called Urban Recipe, right? And you had a chance to visit with them. And I think we're going to cut to a video about them in just a second. Before we cut to that first video, talk about Urban Recipe, anything you want to say about Urban Recipe before we go to that first pre-recorded?
Yeah, so Urban Recipe is a fantastic nonprofit, and one of their specialties is food co-ops. So they actually work right out of this same place back here, just in the far room in the back. They usually have their setup, which you'll see during the pre-record. And as a matter of fact, John, their truck just pulled up outside in the parking lot right now.
Live, so everything is, so even though we felt like everything was stopping, the rest of the world kept moving. That's awesome, yeah.
That's how it is. But yeah, they are, like you said, addressing the issue of food insecurity on the West Side and throughout Atlanta. And, for more information on them, you should check out the pre-recorded interview that I did with Jeremy Lewis.
Yeah,
and
I think first we're going to a video they've done about themselves. So let's go to that first video so our audience can learn more about Urban Recipe.
Gotcha.
I was raising my baby sister 5 kids at that time. I had my grandkids in the house, and then it was about 11 or 12 of us in the house. My husband had a bad accident and was not working. Our finances just kind of went from here to down here. I needed some help. If I didn't have the co-op, I probably would be in a hospital somewhere because it's stressful. I came in contact with the co-op in 1998. It was not the kind of place like a pantry where you just go and get food. Okay, take this morning when I was going there, I had a sad place in my heart. But when I got to the co-op, I had a little joy, just a hug. Sometimes that's all you need. Just, oh, I'm so glad to see you. How you doing? Everything is real personal there. It's like having an extended family. If someone is not there, you notice it immediately, and then you want to know, where's so-and-so? And you love them, and you want to be there because you're a part of this extended family. And some of them are more closer than family. waiting on the truck to arrive, you get to sit back and you get to laugh together, catch up on what's been going on with the person, what's coming up in their life. You also get to cry with them sometimes. It's like when one hurt, all hurts there. It's always a blessing to go to the co-op because you always gonna get something you need extra besides the food. You're gonna get some spiritual food. You're gonna get a little love. You know, you're just gonna get filled when the food get there. Unload the truck and we put it in the boxes. A lot of times people want to help out. They don't want you to just hand it to them. They want to do something to show their appreciation for the food. That I love too about the co-op. But everybody have a part they play. We put the food in the boxes. The food mostly comes from the Atlanta Community Food Bank. What that does for me and my family is help us meet ends so that we don't have to miss any meals. When you go to the co-op, it's always something you need. Like this week, my grandbaby, he's been short on Pampers, and what we've been doing is letting him wear them a little longer. We need a Pampers. I got a bag of Pampers today. Kitty girl, we got chicken wings today.
They say I couldn't make it. They said I wouldn't amount to anything. But I'm glad to say that I'm on my way. I'm growing stronger.
If the co-op didn't give no food and just had this kind of fellowship and show a little love and receive a little love over the years, I believe I still would go there because it has been such a joy. And over the years, I just have grown to love the co-op and the people that's in it. Without the food, I can still have the peoples.
You know, thanks to charitable contributions, we're kind of a similar model. Thanks to charitable contributions and the Impact Fund, working with the Foodwell Alliance, we own the old Community Food Bank building, but because we bought it with philanthropy, we don't have to quote kind of pay back the debt to buy the building, so to speak, or we're able to let people like the Urban Recipe operate at cost, which is the same thing I heard you say, and at cost means kind of covering your cost of operating, but it's a very innovative, and I loved hearing about a co-op because it's about building community as opposed to kind of a food pantry. So, Benjamin, I know you talked to the founder there, and it was great seeing him this morning, just showing that, wow, we're innovating, coming right in and bringing them on our live broadcast. That was innovative, our Westside correspondent. So you want to talk a little bit about what we're about to see, the pre-recorded interview? What do you think the things you really want the audience, because you've been out there, you've done a couple interviews out at our tell folks what you want them to really understand as you're about to go to this next pre-recorded video.
Well, essentially, like any nonprofit, Urban Recipe needs help. They need volunteers, they need donors, they need community partners, so on and so forth. You'll find more information about that at urbanrecipe.org. But pretty much other than that, Jeremy took care of it. So take a look at the pre-record.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Urban Recipe. Our mission is to partner with families and community in making sure that people are food secure and at the same time are building the community around them.
And how do you guys go about doing that?
Well, what we're most well known for is running food co-ops for low-income families, which is a way that families come together every other week, 26 times a year, and make sure that they're working together to meet their own food needs.
All right, Jeremy, and tell folks what can they do to support Urban Recipe? What are you guys' needs? What's your call to action?
Well, the biggest thing that we've always said as an organization is that we are looking for folks who are in this with us. And that's true for our co-op members, that's true for our volunteers, it's true for our donors. People who are committed to working alongside us to make sure that we're able to meet the need that's present in our own community. We're honored to be here in the Westside and to begin to get to know our neighbors. We've been around for over 30 years now, but we're just new to this side of town. And so we'd invite folks to sign up, to come in, to volunteer, to help out. People that are interested in being a part of the sorting process could also help do that. get to know our own neighbors, and build some boxes to make sure that they're able to go out to the families who need them right close by.
All right, Jeremy Lewis, thank you so much for your time and keep up the great work.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great job, Benjamin. We're back live at our studios, and we're about 20 minutes left in our live broadcast, and I really appreciate our panelists this morning, including our panelists coming in all the way from Ecuador via another innovation called Zoom, and one of the things we're unfortunately not going to have time for today, given some of our shifts, is taking more questions from our audience, which we always love to do via our social media feed. But we've gotten some comments I want to read, and appreciate one comment from Bill Bowling, the current chair of the Food Well Alliance. Is interesting morning, a great example of how the show must go on. Yes, Bill, the show must go on, and we're still going on. And then also from Sylvia Russell on our board of directors, and the late Herman Russell's wife. So thank you, Sylvia, your comment. CARE and WFF both align around supporting what the community wants. Love it. So thank you for that comment. And one of the things, especially, I, as the leader of the Westside Future Fund, appreciate that I'm from Atlanta, but I didn't grow up. I'm not from the West Side, but we really have as a value statement, how do we do with the community and not to the community? And I've reflected in my own journey, that sometimes means we need to slow down to speed up, meaning to do with, not to, because sometimes even in our own hearts we think we know better. Like, man, let's just go faster, but that's not doing with, that's doing to. And so how you really do that. So thanks for calling that out, Sylvia, something that we don't always appreciate being held accountable to. So I'm going to ask each of our live panelists, we're going to kind of do a wrap-up set of comments. I'm going to ask each of them for kind of a closing reflection, because I want to make sure for our audience that is watching now, and y'all, a lot of folks actually come back and watch the taped interview. So as you reflect on what you really want to make sure people hear, some of the themes, but I just want to invite each of you to kind of make a final comment, and maybe I'll start with Mark from Ecuador. And again, a lot of appreciation for taking time out of your morning to come to us from Ecuador. But any kind of final comments for our audience? And again, we want to just express a lot of gratitude to CARE and what great work y'all do around, and we're very proud that's headquartered in Atlanta. So thank you for being with us this morning. But any final comments for us, Mark?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it, and happy to take the time with everybody here. It's a challenging time for everyone. Obviously in Atlanta and the U.S., you guys are dealing with COVID in the same way that we're dealing with it down here in Ecuador. I think for the work that we do, not just CARE, but all the organizations speaking today, I think a big piece of it is everybody getting involved, and people getting involved in their communities, people helping out in their communities and looking at different ways they can support, and that's how we're going to come out of this, and this is how we're going to move forward collectively. So really great to be able to be a part of this.
Yeah, well, thank you for helping us build that community and helping us understand some of those key themes that you see around the world, and we really appreciate all the leadership of CARE, and thank you for being with us this morning. And so now, and I'll go last to our counselor, let him kind of sum it up. So I'm going to give him a little time to think about it. As an attorney, he probably needs a little bit of time for his closing argument. But Amelia, so some final thoughts. I mean, it's been, and we're very excited that First Step Staffing is working on the West Side. I think y'all are working out of Westside Works. So much leadership from the Arthur and Blank Family Foundation, along with, the Center for Innovation Hub, which was founded by Bruce Deal, and a lot of support there. But I know actually we're learning too, because some of the folks from the West Side that kind of need y'all's kind of wraparound support, but as we're standing up workers, we've actually said, well, can we hire them from First Step Staffing? So we really appreciate that, because we're using y'all's innovation to help serve the community, so thank you. But any final thoughts for viewers?
No, I think from First Step's perspective, the two things we're always looking for is more jobs. So if you're a business owner or you're already using staffing in some way and are looking for people to hire, think about using us. It's a business win for you, because we're competitive in pricing, and we have a lot of people who are ready to work. And we'd love to work with more businesses around Metro Atlanta. But if you have people that need work, like they do over at the West Side, in every city where we operate right now, we have more jobs than people, and they are good paying jobs. We have some jobs that start next week at $21 an hour. So if you've got people who are trying to get back to work, particularly now in the middle of a pandemic and everybody needs that income, send them over to First Step over on Auburn Avenue, because we're always looking for more people too.
And you have wraparound services, and your goal longer term is someone may start at 21, but as they develop and get on their way, maybe better paying jobs along the way. And
Yep, and we're working with a few partners on training, so we're always trying to help people take not just that first step. We don't want it to be a plateau.
you don't want it to be the last step, the first step.
Right. This is the first on to many, many steps.
And that's really exciting. So thank you for sharing that. And so if anyone, a company is watching right now, how do they get a hold of you? How do they do that?
So you can find us on our website, firststepstaffing.com. All of my contact information is on there. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to reach out by email, phone, any way you can find me. I am always available for people that want to hire. So.
And we're very grateful because you're in 3 cities, but you've been very responsive to the Westside Future Fund. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, John.
And now that he's had time to think about his closing argument, his sum up, is he going to win the jury? Well, all right, so final, I'm sure he will. Final comments, Mick, and I really want to thank you, because this whole concept around innovation was something that you brought to us. So thank you for the idea, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thanks, John. I think on behalf of my partners at Kilpatrick, Townsend, and all my colleagues, I don't think there's anything that we do as a law firm that's more important than the community work that we do. And we learn a tremendous amount from our association with organizations like the Westside Future Fund and First Step and CARE. And it's a real blessing to be able to spend our time and give our talents to these wonderful community organizations. So we really appreciate the platform and the opportunity to chat with everyone today, but we benefit absolutely every day by our association, and just very appreciative.
Well, thank you. And we're going to cut to another pre-recorded interview, but thanks to that innovation with an impact fund, we were able to, through our Home on the West Side program, and Benjamin did a pre-recorded interview of someone we moved into 1300 Mason Turner off of Boone, that in partnership with the City of Refuge. But through our Home on the West Side program, and Benjamin interviewed a family that's recently in high quality affordable housing through our Home on the West Side program. Thank you for that, because the Impact Fund helped bring that to life. So can we cut to that pre-recorded interview? And I want to invite our audience to stick with us. I'm going to announce the winner of the Home Depot Foundation gift, and we'll close out. So if we could cut to that pre-recorded interview of moving a new family in via Home on the West Side.
Kiara, tell us where you grew up, where you're from. How long have you called the West Side home?
Well, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from the West Side, off Rock Street, Simpson Road. I call the West Side my home for forever.
Well, up to now, what has your living situation been like?
Well, 2 years ago, I was homeless. Within 6 months of me being homeless, I called one of my sisters. She let me move in with her. I got 2 jobs. I worked real hard, but because of my history, I didn't get really far. I met Miss Kathleen, and she told me about the West Side program. From that day forward, I have stayed on track, and now I'm gonna have my own house, and my son's gonna be comfortable. Even with me coming home from work every day, working 2 jobs, I still feel like I wasn't pushing to the most, because I was sitting there supporting other people instead of supporting me and my son. And that don't feel good at all. When you don't have nothing, nobody, or anyone to talk to.
What stuck out to you most about Home on the West Side? What made you want to be a part of the program and just give it a try?
When I walked through the door the first day, I felt the spirit of moving forward. There's a lady named Miss Johnson that works with the West Side. The days that I was willing to give up, she stand up for me. She stayed strong for me, and that's what made me stay strong. And thinking about my son every day, I knew I had to go forward with this situation.
How do you anticipate living here at the 1300 having an impact on Jason, your son's life?
We plan to love it, enjoy it. I plan to save a lot, to do a lot for my son. I just really like it because it's affordable, and all the football stuff that he likes to do, now I'll be able to do it.
So Kiara, now that you've got your brand new, sparkling clean, fresh built apartment here at the 1300, How do you see that being a stepping stone toward actual home ownership? And how do you see being a part of Home on the Westside program as providing access to home ownership?
Because this apartment is like affordable for me, I think this would be a great chance for me to save. They will make sure that I stay on track with it. They will make sure all the choices I make is right. Everything I pick is a fit for me to afford. And if there's any other funding available for it, I think they'll be able to step in.
Final question, Kiara. What can we as a community do better towards serving those in our community who are currently or have been underserved?
I feel like the people that's been underserved, they need a lot of more people to listen to them, a lot of more patience, and be honest about a lot of stuff. Thank you, Home of the Westside.
So in our final thoughts, we're going to close out our live broadcast this morning. We thought it was, really topical remarks from Dr. Martin Luther King, the Reverend Martin Luther King, in segments from a speech that he gave at Stanford University in 1967. He expounded on his philosophy behind nonviolence and the nonviolent methodology. And and I want to remind you, we'll be back live again on October 2nd. So we'll be announcing soon the program for October 2nd. But as we go to this last speech, what I found a very powerful, because Dr. King, as a minister, as he was studying how to bring about change, when he went to India and studied how Gandhi had wrote through change through nonviolence, that he brought that methodology because it was in alignment with Christian philosophy of nonviolence. And here he expands, because often you think nonviolence doesn't, and you really, because often the journey is that really going to work, especially in the face of kind of obvious evil and oppression. And what I really appreciate about Dr. King, and I take a lot of personal inspiration, is he modeled what he talked about, in the face of danger and people, often ultimately assassinated. He practiced exactly what he preached. And I always say to myself, well, if I need proof that something works, I'll look at the evidence. And nonviolence, led by Dr. King and so many others that joined that, they changed a country that continues to inspire the world. And one of the Gandhi's quotes, and I was reflecting on what Mick said earlier about fearlessness, that one of Gandhi's quotes that I love is to be truthful, gentle, and fearless. And what I reflect on is, and I take a lot of inspiration, is the fearlessness that so many leaders from the West Side, the historic, the fearlessness by which they continued to pursue their truth, but they were also gentle. And so I love that quote, be truthful, gentle, and fearless. And as we cut to this last segment from Dr. King, I want to thank everyone, thank TMPV for improvising on the spot and with their live broadcast. But thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you to the whole team and everyone that brought you this morning. And I hope you'll watch this last segment. It's a very powerful segment from Dr. King as we close out our live Transform broadcast. And thank you for joining us this morning. And please remember, during COVID, to continue to stay safe, practice that social distancing, and wear your mask, which I'll put back on when we finish our broadcast this morning. So thank you for joining us.
All of our cities are potentially powder kegs as a result of the continued existence of these conditions. Many in moments of anger, many in moments of deep bitterness, engage in riots. And let me say, as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve, and that in a real sense it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. Now let me go on to say that if we are to deal with all of the problems that I've talked about, that we are to bring America to the point that we have one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, there are certain things that we must do. The job ahead must be massive and positive. We must develop massive action programs all over the United States of America in order to deal with the problems that I have mentioned. Now, in order to develop these massive action programs, we've got to get rid of one or two false notions that continue to exist in our society. One is the notion that only time can solve the problem of racial injustice. I'm sure you've heard this idea. It is the notion almost that is something in the very flow of time that will miraculously cure all evils. And I've heard this over and over again. There are those, and they're often sincere people, who say to Negroes and their allies in the white community that we should slow up and just be nice and patient and continue to pray, and in 100 or 200 years the problem will work itself out, because only time can solve the problem. Well, I think that is an answer to that myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme righteous in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always ripe to do right.